And I want to start the evening by recognizing our veterans of war. So if you're a veteran of the war, would you please stand so everybody can give you a hearty round of applause. Thank you. Okay, I'll lead the pledge. Everybody would please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the order of speakers and the approximate time at which we'll be speaking. We're a little delayed, as you know. Okay, a special thanks to Representative Heffley, Representative Knoll, Senator Argel, Dave Boldinger for coming to present the Property Independence Act, otherwise known as House Bill, Senate Bill 76. We're really honored to have such an esteemed panel. I've been to a couple of these presentations by Dave, and we've never had political participation like we do tonight. These people are supporting the bill. We need to support them. Senator Ubishak was also invited. He had conflicts, but he assured me that he is 100% behind the bill, and he's a prime sponsor. Since we have such a big crowd tonight, I don't know that we'll get through all your Q&A. So there are knowledgeable members here, and I'm going to ask them to stand up. As you're milling out of the building, you can talk to them. They're really knowledgeable and know on the bill, and they may be able to answer a lot of your questions. So Steve Trainer, he's running late. He had to work. He's not here yet. Lou Larizio, he's working at the hospital. He's trying to get some time off. But Jack, raise your hand. You got the camera? Okay, Jack. Help me with your last name. Siaka? Got it. Okay. Dave Waldron, our local DJ. He does have business cards here if anybody wants to grab one. Brian Fate, very hard worker. The mailers that you received in the mail, if you got them, or the ones in the back, he's instrumental in doing that. He sends them to every community. The man's relentless. Pitbull. Now Lucy Cahol, is she here? She didn't make it, okay. Okay, so my wife, Janice, and I'm sorry, Brian, your wife's name, I honestly don't remember. I'm sorry. You can raise her hand, she's another one that'll be able to help you out. The PTCC members, I asked if they just gather at that table back there as you're milling out, you can ask them the question. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the restrooms I told you, but I'll repeat it. Women's room out this door upstairs, men's room out that door upstairs. Water fountains are located in both hallways, but we have bottled water and cookies in the back. Feel free to grab them at any time. Please mute your cell phone, ringer, place it on vibrate, turn it off if you don't need it, but if you need it on, please put it on vibrate. And if you can hold your questions in Q&A until roughly 8 o'clock after we're done with all the presentations. Okay, tonight, what are you going to learn? You're going to learn the facts about SB 76. And you're going to dispel the myths. So what are we going to do with these myths? We're going to get rid of them, all right? They're gone. Any questions you have will be answered tonight, okay? So most people probably have heard of 76 in one manner or another. It's a dollar-for-dollar tax shift that will increase state sales tax and PIP while totally eliminating school district property taxes. Different than Wolf's plan. You'll hear a lot more about that. But that's where the understanding ends for many. It's so much more than that, okay? You've all heard the term downward spiral. We know what that is. Well, many of you, most of you will agree that the Pennsylvania economy has been in that downward spiral for a long time. 76 ends that and all. Touch on why briefly. Next slide, please. Okay, the domino effect. Everybody knows about tax shift, but here's some of the domino effect. It will unleash primary, secondary, tertiary economic stimulus that is literally impossible to capture here. It's estimated that $12 billion will be injected into the Pennsylvania economy. That money will bolster businesses all over Pennsylvania. There'll be increased demand for services and goods. That's going to result in hiring, lower unemployment, reduced poverty, and reduced crime due to the increased employment opportunities. And many of these jobs will be middle-class wages and benefits. There's a repeating theme here: more money funneled back into the economy, thus revenue generated for the funding mechanism of 76. Next slide. Domino effect continues. What happens from the renter's perspective? That's always a concern, okay? Number one, reduced property blight. Safer, better maintained rental units because the landlord will now have extra money to dump back into the property. Landlords with integrity, and that might only be 10%, 20%, I know that, but will reduce rent. They'll pass it along. Will they pass along 100% of the reduction? I doubt it, but they'll pass along something. Now, what's going to happen to the rest? Market forces. Market forces always win in the end. What do I mean by market forces? There's such a pent-up demand for housing, and property taxes are so prohibitive that if they go away, people are going to explode out and buy homes, all right? Now what's going to happen? Rental property occupancy is at an all-time high. All of a sudden, landlords are going to be looking at empty rental units, and they're going to have to reduce their rental property rates to attract people. Trust me, that may take 3, 4, 5 years, but market forces always win. Okay, some naysayers claim that 76 hurts the lower income folks. There are provisions in the bill that address this concern. Dave will talk about that. And 76 would likely create economic stimulus of historic relevance, creating unprecedented opportunity, improving economic class for many. Next slide. Okay, here's one that a lot of people don't think about, and it's probably the most important part of the bill. Everybody has been told all their life, education begins in the home. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important to a child's ability to maximize their potential than a stable home environment. All too often when the adults in the room are discussing anything, you know, this bill, property taxes, building schools, whatever it may be, the nitpicking, the fighting, everybody's fighting for their own turf. But the collateral with the current funding of property taxes is our children, the collateral damage. And 76 is not a magic bullet, but it's going to greatly reduce children suffering in silence. Many of them are suffering because of tax sales, foreclosures, reduced quality of life, reduced opportunity, increased home instability, reduced parental interaction due to need to work multiple jobs, reduced thermostats, and increased stress. These people live that. You know it. You know how your children are suffering. Next slide. Is 76 good tax policy? I plagiarized this slide from Mr. Baldinger here. But the Pennsylvania Institute of Certified Public Accountants put out 10 principles that make good tax policy. I'm not going to read them all. You can read them. But trust me, as you listen to the presentation tonight, 76 will fill every one of these 10 principles. Next slide. And that brings us up to Dave Bradley, who's part of the Lehighton Taxpayer Group.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. All right, thanks everybody for coming, especially our distinguished guests. This is a child-friendly bill and has the support of many parents wanting the best for their children. I'm going to throw a link with this in. Basically, the short part of my presentation is the current abuse of power to tax by school boards, which this bill should limit significantly. This bill will ensure districts create a sustainability plan. Each district will need to use asset management and financial management to control the costs in the district. The intrinsic value and the intrinsic savings will help the children get what they need for education and limit the district's waste on items not directly benefiting the students. But students end up coming first finally. This puts children's needs first and the pressure on the volunteer board to stay focused on the children. By removing the unlimited access to taxpayer funds, the education tax replacement system, which is what this is talking about, requires the boards to focus their spending on the children. Currently, the school boards have a state-mandated limit on tax increase, a ceiling, as it were. The ceiling is very limited, though, and has no oversight. It also doesn't have any oversight on how it's been used. If used poorly, the accountability is found to be missing from the system. Currently, the state-mandated limit is announced each year. The maximum state-mandated increase handed down acts as a ceiling. This is typically a not-to-exceed number. Some districts take it as I can go to that limit. What we want to do is, the old law has a false ceiling. The district can petition the state for an exception to the increase, and the state has never denied one. The control should be left locally with the people and a referendum. There's an Act 25 of 2011 that puts some of that accountability back into the districts. You would think that no citizen would ever pass such a referendum. However, in many districts, unlike some of the ones here in Carbon, the voting population outnumbers the corporate landholders. Passing a referendum is an easy push. Citizens demand taxes to raise and drag along the bigger fish. Regretfully, they also crush some of the seniors, and they think more is better. It's basically a mob rule. You'll notice that in some of the areas that are more prolifically handled by industry. Everybody always picks on Parkland for one of those bigger areas. In a more rural area, much like what we have here, the referendum is feared by many districts. The business owners are also citizens. They hire the local craft, and these mismanaged district burdens lay heavily on such communities. They crush the local economies, pulling much needed funds from the local float of the service-based economy. Palmerton, Lehighton, Jim Thorpe, Panther Valley, Pleasant Valley are all basically mainly service-based industries where the people that own the business are getting double dipped when the tax increase shows up. These communities are more susceptible to the slightest increase in taxes. In towns like these, taxpayers end up voting with their feet. The spike causes foreclosures and vacancies in the district. The people pick up and leave. Their exodus is their vote on the system. From 1990 to 2000, the vacancy rate of housing in Lehighton specifically increased 59% following the construction of a new high school. It was touted to increase the manufacturing base, but without a sustainability plan, the checks and balance in the system, it failed to deliver on the promises. It actually contributed to the opposite effect, a 59% increase in vacancies. A sustainability plan, which is what's going to happen with 76, will correct these best-intentioned ideas. The oversight and the data and accountability that's currently missing in the system will be put back into the system as the districts form a sustainability plan. I'm not as good as these guys, so I got to read a paper, sorry. The bill requires that the boards think and act better. This will create a sustainability plan that calculates the impact not only on the taxpayer, but on the tax base as well. It'll fix the apathy intent, which is currently on this citizen oversight. Currently, local boards are given a few excuses to use to exercise their power to tax. The first is a construction project, with cost overruns, construction managers, architect's fees, and mistakes in the plan surface. Those contractors and those subs still have to get paid. So they re-tap into the tax system currently, and they don't have to monitor their costs as well. Therefore, the boards need to have the ability to extract money from the taxpayers to pay the subs, and the board is on the hook for everything the board approves. The board is given nearly an unlimited supply of tax increases under the current plan. This is a loophole that we can see locally. The Lehighton School District is driving an elementary center through that loophole. The power to tax on construction projects practically unlimited. The second excuse for overtaxation is grandfathered debt, currently in the system. Senate Bill 76 addresses this as well, which Dave will go over. Since the board is acting on behalf of the district, they have the power to tax any district debt or bonds. Once signed, the district is on the hook. To leave the board no option but to pay the bond or the debt that the board incurred puts the district in risk of solvency. So they have to have that power to tax or control their spending. In the old system, the state needed to leave the specific tax ceiling open, kind of like a Willy Wonka elevator without the glass, to cover any district borrowings. Senate Bill 76 gives the power back to the people. It's imperative that a grassroots organization learns all the details of the current system. The educational tax system can be complex. A lot of us have read it completely, but it takes citizens like you and me to make sure that we all read it. It's the laws that we're being asked to follow, so we should read them. The grassroots team behind 76 loves to read. The people at PTCC, which is in the back, sign up and they'll get the information too, have meticulously vetted the existing plan and formed this grassroots plan. The grassroots team assembled the smartest minds and formed a statewide team to create a bill that replaces the archaic system. Part of that team is here. The financial review was vetted heavily and checked again externally by third parties. And Dave will get into that as well. They have watched the system being manipulated in their own homes. It's because of people like you that the momentum for this bill exists. And it's because people like you that are willing to take action to make this state a leader again. And that's what we're looking for. Speaking up is a scary thing. I'm reading. But speaking up is a scary thing. Don't let your silence be your compliance to a flawed system. So thanks for attending. I'm sure you'll not be disappointed in the transparent way this bill is presented. And we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
You're on.
I guess I'm up next. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great crowd. As Bob and David mentioned, my name is David Baldinger. I'm from Berks County, and this effort has been my full-time unpaid job since 2004. What David mentioned is absolutely true. This is fully a grassroots effort with cooperating members of the General Assembly, some of whom are seated here tonight. We were given the opportunity to help craft this legislation. This is not the usual stuff that comes out of Harrisburg. This is something that was done by us. And this is why we support it. I represent the Pennsylvania Coalition of Taxpayer Associations. We are 84 nonpartisan grassroots groups from across the state who are working for this bill, and we need your help. So let's talk about it. I always feel you can't understand the solution if you don't understand the problem. Here's a few numbers for you tonight. $27 billion is the current total cost of K-12 education in Pennsylvania. 6.25% is the current average annual rate of increase in the cost of education. If you use that as a constant and extend it out for 10 years, you'll find 10 years from now that is going to balloon to $53 billion. Since the state only funds schools a little bit more than 30%, that means the additional 65 to 70% is going to come out of local taxpayer dollars. Property taxes, your property taxes. Another number for you. 30% is the increase you can expect to see in your property taxes over the next 2, 3, 4 years because of the pension spike. Who's familiar with the pension spike? Okay, it's got to be financed. And in this case, when the General Assembly approved the pension increases, they managed to shove the responsibility for it down to the local level. Heaven forbid we should raise taxes at the state level and jeopardize the jobs. Let's send it down to the school boards to raise the taxes. Let them be the ones to take the heat. Who can sustain a 30% increase in their school property tax in the next 10 years? I can't. And one more. This is from the Reading Eagle. Tax sales, Schuylkill County, Lackawanna County, Dauphin County, all the same. 10,000. The number of families we estimate are uprooted every year taken from their homes by school property tax sales. This doesn't include foreclosures. Foreclosure numbers are almost double that. This is strictly 10,000 people taken from their homes for non-payment of property taxes. This is unconscionable and has to end. We're not talking so much about property taxes, but education, finance reform. First myth is that property taxes are the problem. They are not. The problem is a broken education finance system. Property taxes are only a symptom of it. The real problems. First of all, this is an antiquated taxation system that's not based on accepted taxation principles. The property tax dates back, first of all, to medieval times, when the landowners paid to support their government. It was imported into Pennsylvania in the early 19th century, and it kind of made sense at that time because we were an agrarian society. Most people earned their living from the land, and you could assume the landowner who had 40 acres was making more money than one who owned 10 acres. There was no income reporting, and this served as a proxy for wealth, and people were taxed accordingly. But people don't earn money with their properties anymore. They're residential. We live in our homes. They don't generate income anymore, so why are we treating it as if they still do? But besides that, the property tax bears no relationship whatsoever to a person's ability to pay. And that is the most basic precept of taxation, that it should consider the person's ability to pay. Yes, we've heard the excuse, well, if somebody has $1 million home, they can afford to pay for it. Well, how about the person with a $150,000 home? How about if somebody gets sick? How about if they lose a job? How about when they retire? Can they still afford to keep paying those property taxes? It bears no relationship whatsoever to their income, and it's a totally unfair tax, which goes to the second bullet. They're inherently arbitrary and unfair. A tax assessor comes out, reassesses properties within a county, walks down the street, this one's 150, this is 200, this is 250, totally arbitrary. You can contest it. It happened to us in Berks County in 1987, I believe it was, our last countywide reassessment. Now, my wife and I live in a cookie-cutter development. All the homes were built about the same time, same lot size, same basic square footage, yet somehow our house was assessed at $50,000 more than our neighbor's house. We appealed it, got a small reduction, but that's not the point. The system is flawed in the fact that it is so arbitrary, and what makes it worse is that some assessors use a computer algorithm, and they'll say, well, the average price for a home in this area is this much, and they'll apply it to all the homes, regardless of whether or not those homes deserve that price. Inability to pay property tax bills. Every year when we pay, or I guess about every 6 months, we have the April bill and we have the school tax bill later in the year. I always have a chat with our tax collector. She's very much in favor of what we're trying to do, and she also feeds me a lot of good information. She said last year when the school property tax bills were due, which is what, September, October, I guess, or August, September, whatever. She said more people than ever had said they either had to take out loans to pay the bill, take out a reverse mortgage. Some came to her and offered partial payments, which aren't acceptable. People complained about being afraid of losing their homes. This gets worse and worse each year, and she feeds me this information. Too many people are losing their homes because of this. Too many people are in fear of losing their homes because of this. And out-of-control spending. Supposedly there are limits on what school boards can spend, how much you can raise property taxes each year. That was done with Act 1 of 2006. Where the school boards are limited to an inflationary index, except there's 3 exceptions remaining where they can raise property taxes above the limit simply by going to the Department of Education. And since the first year this went into effect, the Department of Education has never turned down an exception to the referendum where the voters are supposed to be able to decide whether or not to raise property taxes to that level. Speaking of out-of-control spending, in my own school district in Berks County, we have an artificial turf football field. They said, what the hell, as long as we're doing that, let's spend an extra $1 million and turf the auxiliary soccer field as well. We have a $500,000 weight room, a $250,000 tennis court, 2 blocks from the municipal court. For those of you from Monroe County, anybody here from Monroe? East Stroudsburg North. Who's familiar with the artificial surface running track? $1.7 million for an artificial surface running track, artificial surface infield, and bleachers. When one of the school board members was asked why they were doing it, he said, well, East Stroudsburg South has one, so we should have one too. What kind of control is that? This is the kind of spending we're dealing with, school boards spending our money, and any 5 school board members with an agenda being able to raise your property taxes at will. And that leads into lack of effective education cost controls. There are none. Education, taxation, and equities. I'm not going to get into the weeds of this, but because of the 1991 funding formula, every school district in the state gets the same relative amount of funding from the state level, regardless of changes in student population. Berwick School District in Columbia County has lost more than 1,000 students in the past 10 years. They still receive the same amount of money as if they still had those 1,000 students present. Because of it, they don't have to educate them, their expenses are low, and so are their property taxes. Their school budget is financed roughly 40% by local property taxes. On the flip side, York Suburban School District in York County has had a large influx of students over the past 10 years. Their school budget is financed 89% by local property taxes. Where is the equity in that? And the projected cost of education that I mentioned. This is going to be difficult for some of you to see. I'll try to explain it, and keep it in mind. You don't have to remember the numbers, but I'm going to refer back to it later, because this really, really demonstrates the problem. The bottom red line is the increase. By the way, this is a chart from the Pennsylvania Independent Fiscal Office. They did two analyses of House Bill and Senate Bill 76. So this is not something I made up. This came from them. It looks at the increase in the Consumer Price Index, which is inflation, Pennsylvania average weekly wage, which is a direct reflection of a person's ability to pay tax, and the school taxes over a 20-year period from 1993 to 2013. In that time, the Consumer Price Index rose 59%, the average weekly wage rose by 80%, school property taxes by 146%, and still accelerating. That gap keeps getting wider and wider and wider. Considering the difference between the average weekly wage and the school property taxes, how much longer are people going to be able to afford these increases? And worse, if this keeps up, the education finance system in Pennsylvania is going to fail. This is why we have to take care of it now before this accelerates any further. And again, just remember roughly the difference in those lines. I'll refer back to it in a little while. Real problem is an irreparably broken K-12 public education finance system. It's not about property tax relief, because there is no such thing, and I'll get on that in a minute too. It's about fixing the system so it's fair to everyone. Myth number 2, property tax relief or property tax reform is the solution. How many times in the past 30 years have you heard those words? And there's no such thing, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, we had Act 50 and Act 72. They're both variations on a theme. They gave local school boards the ability to shift partially from local property taxes to a local earned income tax. Very few school districts did it voluntarily, so in 2006, Governor Rendell pushed for Act 1, which was supposed to give us property tax relief from gambling, and give the people the choice whether or not to switch or to do a partial shift from property taxes to a local earned income tax. It was put to referendum in early 2007. Of 498 eligible school districts in the state, 494 said no. Afterwards, Governor Rendell said the people were stupid for turning it down. I'm sorry, Governor Rendell, I disagree. The people understood. As long as you don't cap property taxes, as long as you don't eliminate them, you can shift all you want locally, those property taxes are going to keep going right back up again until you're right where you were before, only with the new taxes to pay. Same thing came up with House Bill 1600 about 4 years ago, a state level shift. Half a point increase in the income tax, a half point increase in the sales tax for about a $400 rebate. How long would it take you to make up that $400 in increased property taxes? And you're right back where you were before, only a half point extra on the income tax and the sales tax. Same thing last session with House Bill 1189, the Optional Property Tax Elimination Act. Local tax shift idea, same principle. And now I'm going to get down and dirty. How many of you have heard about the Wolf Property Tax Relief Plan? Show of hands. What's he promising? Average 50% reduction for all homeowners. That the number? Got that right? First of all, his revenue sources generate about $3.2 billion. Total school property taxes, residential school property taxes in Pennsylvania are about $10 billion. I mean, I may be math challenged, but 3.2 doesn't sound like half of 10 billion to me. Same situation. He doesn't cap school district property taxes. He doesn't eliminate school district property taxes. They're going to keep going right back up again. And he's looking at increasing the sales tax to 6.6% from the current 6, taking the income tax to, help me guys, what is it, 3.7, from the current 3.07, 3.7. Sales tax increase, income tax increase, and in a 2 years, you're going to be paying those extra taxes, and your school district property taxes are going to be right back to where they were before. But the real scam, and this is what infuriates me the most, it's not distributed equally. And if you go to the Department of Education's website and take a look at the distribution model for this, there are some school districts that receive as little as a 15% property tax reduction, while there are other school districts that receive as much as 306%. Now, in what way is that fair? There have been estimates that about roughly 400 school districts, you'll be paying more in the new taxes than you'll get in relief in property taxes. Only about 100 will the taxpayers actually benefit. And of those that are getting the very high ones, the 150, 200, 300%, for the most part, they're the school districts that are already getting huge subsidies from the state. Reading School District is getting about a 200% reduction. They are financed 80% from the state level, and they're dumping more money into that. The plan is a scam, and what we're saying is, Governor Wolf, you want to talk about this? And one more thing that infuriates the hell out of me. We worked for 10 years on the plan we're going to talk about tonight. It took us 18 months to craft this plan. He stole it and bastardized it, and he's running it out as his plan for property tax relief, and it absolutely infuriates the supporters of this plan. Why not do it all the way, Governor Wolf? The plan's right in front of you. You're suggesting basically the same thing that we've been saying all along, only you don't want to give us full elimination, and we are going to fight it tooth and nail. Bottom line, relief revenue is quickly outstripped by relentlessly rising school property taxes, and any property tax relief plan is doomed to failure if the system is not restructured, period. Those are our 3 R's. We don't like the word relief, we don't like reform, we don't like reduction. Replace the school property taxes, and as Senator August says, drive a stake to the heart of it and end it forever. Our guy's been sitting there for 30 years. We hear the lawmakers tell us that this is a very complex issue that's not easily resolved. I'm tired of the excuses. These are whiny excuses for not doing the job we hired them to do. Get off your butts, do what's right, and fix the system now. Why is the time for change rising homeowner discontent? You're here tonight. We see it all the time. People, emails, I probably get anywhere from 30 to 40 emails a day from people saying they support this, they want to be on our email list. Our PTCC Facebook page is now almost 4,000 subs. People are really tired of it. They're tired of the Act 50, Act 72, and Act 1 failures, and how do you like the relief you got from gambling money? That really worked, didn't it? Our school district, $116 against a $4,600 tax bill. It has been $116 since 2007. Nothing has changed, and the property taxes keep going up and up and up. Pressure from taxpayers, groups, in the media, and folks in Harrisburg are feeling it. They've heard from us, they know we're here, we're making noise, and it's amazing. A representative whose name I mentioned came up with a plan for property tax relief. He released a co-sponsorship memorandum back in January. It was partially a local tax shift, partially a state-level tax shift. I was fortunate to receive the co-sponsorship memorandum within a half an hour after it was issued. I popped it up on our Facebook page. Half an hour later, I got a call from this representative's chief of staff saying, "What the hell did you do to us?" She said, "The phones have been going crazy for the past hour." We have the voice, we just have to exercise it, and that's what you folks need to do too. And if you like what you hear tonight, please, you gotta get active. And finally, and this is the biggest problem, diminishing opportunity to fund property tax replacement from a state-level source. When we first started looking at this back in 2004, former State Representative Sam Rohrer had a plan that would have increased the sales tax, expanded the sales tax base to more items and services, but reduced the rate to 4.25%. That would have completely eliminated school property taxes at the time. We were looking at about $8 billion. Now, 10 years later, we're looking at $12.7 billion. We are outstripping the ability to eliminate school property taxes at the state level because we have to raise state level taxes way too far for public or political acceptance. We have to get this done now. You'll hear the rates and what's in the plan later. You'll see why. We've got to get it done. A couple more facts. July 2014 Arizona State University job growth ranking for Pennsylvania. We are 36th of 50 states with a growth rate of 1.19%. That's awful. 2014, United Van Lines, this just came out in December. United Van Lines National Movers Study. Pennsylvania ranked 9th in out-migration. 43.2% people were inbound, 56.8% outbound. They're running to get away from taxes, and we've heard this from a lot of young people. They go to college here, they graduate college, they don't stay. They don't want to deal with our tax structure. They certainly can't buy a home, so they get out and go someplace else. Tax Foundation, location matters. Comparative analysis of state tax costs on business for Pennsylvania. We are 49th of 50 for new firms, 50th of 50 for mature established firms. Who knows what a KOZ is? Keystone Opportunity Zone. Targeted tax abatements to attract business to Pennsylvania. The one I'm most familiar with is Cabela's in Hamburg. They received a 10-year property tax abatement to come here. It worked. They came, and for any of you who have been to Cabela's, you've seen all the growth that's happened around it. On the flip side of that, it works for a time. EA Games, Chester County, moved in there, this is about 15 years ago, check it in the news. They moved in there with a 10-year abatement. They're a software producer. They don't have a lot of infrastructure. 10 years to the day, when the abatement ran out, EA Games packed up shop and got out of Pennsylvania. Point of this is, 49th to 50 for new firms, that's probably because they're getting some abatements. 50th to 50, that's absolutely terrible. And I'll get back to the KOZs again, but the bottom line is, runaway property taxes are destroying Pennsylvania's economy, devastating job-producing small businesses, and driving away our residents. Here's the solution. Replace the school property tax with a more broad-based and equitable funding stream. When we're saying broad-based, right now 3.2 million families, homeowners, are footing most of the bill, against 12.7 million residents in Pennsylvania, plus visitors to the state. That's a much broader tax base, and everybody winds up paying less. What we're talking about is the Property Tax Independence Act, House Bill 76, and Senate Bill 76. Basically identical pieces of legislation written in the same manner. When I first started working with Representative Jim Cox in November 2010, we looked at previous versions of elimination plans and said, what do we want to do with them? So let's scrap the whole thing, start from scratch. The only two components from previous versions were the funding sources, the sales tax and the income tax, and that's because they're the only two state-level sources that are capable of doing it. First thing we said was total elimination of the school property tax. There's one little part of that I'll get to in a minute. Total elimination can be phased in over a 2-year period. First year, frozen at current levels. Second year, goes away completely. Total elimination of school board taxing ability with specific exceptions. Now you can't leave the schools twisting in the wind. They're going to have legitimate needs. A new roof on the school, whatever. The bill allows the school districts to impose a local earned income tax. No property tax, it's gone. A local earned income tax or a local personal income tax, but by voter referendum only. What a unique concept. It actually gives taxpayers a chance to decide whether or not they want to spend this money, a vote on the budget, and a vote on the rate of taxation. And we hear the argument all the time, this bill takes away local control. The only local control it removes is the ability of any 5 school board members to raise your taxes. There are no mandates of any kind. The school boards can use the money as they wish, but the replacement comes from the state, and you determine if they have any other taxes beyond that. Stabilization of school funding. We hear the argument all the time that the property tax is the most stable tax, that income taxes and sales tax vary too much with the economy. I guess there's a certain logic to that because you do what you have to do when someone's holding a gun to your head, or in this case, threatening to take your house. But that's not always true either, and I have an example of that. Jens, help me. Talk to me. School district. No, Upper Marion. Sorry, brain cramp. Upper Marion School District in Montgomery County. Several years ago, they appealed their property tax assessment. The school board, of course, fought the appeal. It was in the courts for 2 years, and in the end, it's GlaxoSmithKline, didn't even mention that. GlaxoSmithKline, pharmaceutical manufacturer, the ones who appealed. It was in the courts for 2 years, but in the end, GlaxoSmithKline won the appeal, resulting in a $2 million annual loss to the school district just from their taxes alone. The upshot to it was, because it was in the courts for 2 years, the school district also had to rebate $4 million to them for the time it was in the court system. This is not unusual. Businesses have learned, they learn more quickly than homeowners, that it pays to appeal your property assessment, especially with the downturn in the housing market in 2008, because your home is worth far less now than it was in 2008. The appeals actually destabilize school funding. But because of that, the school board members are obliged to raise property taxes to make up for the losses. So to say that school funding is stable, but the property tax isn't necessarily true, and actually the income tax and the sales tax have proven over time to be far more stable than the property tax, and establish realistic limits on increases in K-12 education spending. So first of all, the elimination tax law must be tax revenue neutral, and that's the only fair way to do it. It doesn't generate any more, the two taxes do not generate anything more than what is necessary to eliminate the school property taxes. Funding sources are a moderate expansion of the sales tax base to include more items and services with exemptions for necessities. And if you've been listening to what Governor Wolf has been saying, this is exactly what he wants to do. He wants to expand the sales tax base. Pennsylvania has the narrowest sales tax base of any state in the country. Eventually, that base is going to be expanded one way or another. Governor Rendell's tried to do it in his last year in office. He wanted to expand the base, he was shot down, but eventually it's going to happen. Let's do it now for a good purpose to get rid of school property taxes. In the expansion, gum, candy, magazines, hair cards. Food not on the WIC list. WIC list, if you're not familiar, stands for Women, Infants, and Children. It's federal guidelines on nutritionally based foods, no added preservatives, no added sugar. Anything in the WIC list cannot be taxable. If you like your Oreos and your Doritos, sorry, there's going to be sales tax on it. Any single item of clothing with a value of $50 or greater. How many people in here tonight are wearing anything worth more than $50? I'm not. Exemptions. Food stamp purchases. All utilities, all home heating fuels, tuition, all health, hospital, and dental services, prescription drugs, and home health care are all exempt from the sales tax under this plan. Now, there's always an instinctive objection. Senator Argall told me that his wife didn't like the idea of taxing shoes, because she likes shoes. Everybody's going to have an objection to something. And there's this instinctive objection that says, no, you shouldn't tax clothing, no, you shouldn't tax food, no, you shouldn't tax books. Forget the instinctive objection and look at it objectively for a second. Average school property tax bill in Pennsylvania is $3,500 a year. For you to equal that in sales tax, you would have to spend $50,000 in newly taxed items and services to equal the amount of property tax eliminated. How many of you are going to do that? In the end, it doesn't matter what's included in the sales tax base, because there's no way you're ever going to spend enough money on new sales tax to make up for the school property taxes that have been eliminated. Increase in state personal income tax rate to 4.34%. That's an increase of 1.27 over the current 3.07, or about $0.0125 on the dollar. And the Act 1 gambling revenue currently allocated to property tax relief. That amounts to about $800 million a year against $12.7 billion. It's not a whole lot, but you don't need it anymore for property tax relief, so let's throw it in the pot. And a small retained property tax for long-term debt. When we were looking at the finances, I said, how are we going to do $12.7 billion? Previous versions of the bill called for all school district debt to be serviced at the state level. To do that in '76, the income tax would have had to go from, instead of 4.34 to almost 5%, or the sales tax to 8%. That this is just not politically popular. The lawmakers aren't going to like it, neither are the residents. I said, how do we handle this? One of the objections we had in previous versions of the bill was, why should I pay higher state level taxes to pay for school districts that weren't frugal and overspent? And I think that's a good argument. But what we said was, The school districts at enactment have to declare how much outstanding debt they have and how much they pay annually on that debt service. They will be allowed to impose enough property tax for debt payment and nothing more. This way, the debt stays with the school district that incurred it. We did the research on this. Statewide, average school district debt is about 10% of school district budgets. So at enactment, you'll see a 90% reduction in the property tax until the debt is paid off. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It could be 5 years, it could be 20, it could be 30. But I'll still take the 90% reduction until that debt goes away. The school districts will not be able to add any debt to it. They'll not be able to increase the property tax during that time, only enough to meet the annual debt service. Worst case scenario we found in the state was one district with 18% of their budget going to debt service. But on average, about 10% statewide. All property tax replacement revenue is to be placed in the Education Stabilization Fund, which is a segregated lockbox account. I always get the moans when I say that, because people talk about the Social Security Trust Fund and how it was rated. That's not so much the case here. First of all, Pennsylvania can't borrow to make up for the money that they steal from the fund. But that's not the point of it. The point is transparency. Every dollar that's generated through the increased taxes goes into the Education Stabilization Fund. Every dollar that's taken out is visible. You can see exactly what's happening and whether anybody's messing with it. And this is important because the current funding system from Harrisburg is subject to a lot of legislative and executive branch meddling. There are school districts that get extra little perks depending on which lawmaker wants it for their district. This you can't mess with because it's all visible through the ESF. Now, how do you drive it out to the schools? That's been a big question. And there are those who say, oh, they're going to collect all the money from me and send it to Philadelphia and send it to Pittsburgh. Not true. Representative Cox told about 50 members of his colleagues in the House about how to distribute the money to the schools, and for everyone he talked to, everyone had a different idea. In the end, it was decided, dollar for dollar replacement of all school property taxes eliminated in each district. If your school district loses $10 billion of revenue, they get $10 million back from the state fund. There's no distribution formula of any kind, and no redistribution of wealth, so you don't have to worry about your money going to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. Annual funding increases to the schools, and this is the cost control built into the bill. Annual funding increases to the schools are based either on the increase in the Pennsylvania average weekly wage or available revenue. In this case, available revenue meaning the average percentage increase in sales tax and income tax, and distributed to each district equally on a percentage basis. What this does is tie annual increases to the schools directly to the rate of inflation. No more 6% increases in property taxes. This keeps the schools under control. If they want more money, I'll get to that. Supplemental school funding through a local earned income tax or personal income tax. Subject to a no exception referendum if it's for a specific project. The school wants to artificial turf the football field. They've got to tell you the purpose of the project, the cost of the project, the tax rate they're going to apply, and a sunset date for the tax. They can also do it for general school district funding, but the referendum has to be refreshed every 4 years. So any kind of taxation they try to impose on you for an income tax, you have a voice in the matter. The legislation is going to be implemented strictly for eliminating local school property taxes. It doesn't mess with basic education subsidy coming out of the state. Previous versions of the bill threw all the money into one big pot and came up with a new funding formula, absolutely killed the bill. We said the most important thing to us right now is to eliminate the school property tax, and to commingle this revenue with the basic education subsidy would just be asking for trouble. So the lawmakers and the executive branch have carte blanche to do what they want to do with the money that they normally distribute to the schools. Now, anything enacted by statute can be unenacted in the same way. Concurrent legislation proposing a constitutional amendment to forever abolish property taxes as a school funding source, and that is the guarantee. Once that constitutional amendment passes, it can never be reinstated. The legislation is in full fiscal compliance with the financial analysis conducted by the Pennsylvania Independent Fiscal Office that was released October 1st, 2013, and actually there was another one a year prior to that. Both of them came out basically the same. These are comments from the IFO analysis. I'll get to the numbers in a second. But these were comments at the end of the analysis. The elimination of school property taxes increases the disposable income of property taxpayers. The analysis assumes that 70% of the property tax cut goes to individuals, which is about right, 70% to homeowners, about 30% to businesses. It further assumes that homeowners will spend 90% of the increase in disposable income, which is what Bob and David were talking about. This is a financial stimulus. What are you going to do if you get $2,500 in school property taxes back? Maybe you'll save it, maybe you'll spend it. Maybe you'll buy a new flat screen TV. The federal government borrows money to stimulate the economy. We have it right here in front of us. Roughly $10 billion in homeowner school property taxes every year pumped right back into Pennsylvania's economy. The analysis also indicates that the legislation will cause home values to increase on average by more than 10% statewide. Monroe County, I'm going to pick on you again because you're the poster child for what's wrong with this in Pennsylvania. There are many homes in Monroe right now where the monthly school property tax escrow is equal or greater than the mortgage payment itself. There are homes where the school property tax is 5% of the home's value. A $200,000 home in the market with a $10,000 annual property tax load. Who's going to buy a house like that? It's absolutely killing the property tax the real estate market in Pennsylvania. Consider for a second what would happen if you get rid of that monthly school property tax escrow. First of all, like it says, your home value is going to increase. It's going to be easier to sell. But think of all the new buyers in the market, young people looking to buy their first home. It happened with our son and our daughter-in-law. They wanted to buy a home, the mortgage was not a problem. Oh, $200 a month property tax escrow. It killed the deal. They eventually were able to buy, but that's not the point. This happens all the time. Working-age homeowners realize a tax cut. The analysis finds that the increase in federal income tax, if you itemize on Schedule A of the federal income tax, you can currently deduct your property taxes. They said you're going to lose that exemption. The IFO still said that the increase in federal income tax to lower itemized deductions, the increase in state income tax and sales tax is more than offset by the reduction in the property taxes. Retired homeowners, as you would expect, realize a significant reduction in taxes. The analysis found that the property tax reduction easily offsets any increase for the higher sales tax. This is the one I love. We have a lot of arguments that you shouldn't eliminate for businesses. I'm going to get off track here for a second, but I've never quite understood this idea that businesses should be taxed and homeowners shouldn't, because businesses don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. If you have a business person who has a product and you raise the property tax, they're going to build that into the cost of the product, and you ultimately wind up paying it anyway, so what's the difference? Anyway, the elimination of property taxes would significantly, and these are their words, significantly reduce the property tax share and would clearly increase the attractiveness of the Commonwealth for business, location, and expansion. Back to Keystone Opportunity Zones. We let the politicians pick and choose who gets a KOZ abatement. Why not throw our arms open? Say, come on, businesses, we're going to eliminate the property tax completely. Come to Pennsylvania, set up shop here, and bring your jobs with you. Benefits would also accrue to home builders, home developers, and other landowners who convert current land holdings into new housing plots. And employment would increase in the construction sector as well. And finally, regarding business entities, the income flows through to individuals as higher disposable income. For pass-through entities, the analysis assumes that owners and shareholders spend 90% of the increase, and 70% is spent on taxable goods and services, yielding another secondary effect of $34 million in increased sales taxes for fiscal year 2013-14. You spend the money, you pay more sales tax, this builds on itself. It's a no-brainer. The more you spend, the more sales taxes, the more available for education. And what I talked to you about in the beginning, this is our bill, and we'll defend it. We feel a strong attachment to it because we were given the opportunity to write legislation in Pennsylvania, a unique opportunity in a state that has no voter initiative and referendum. This is a tremendous opportunity for us, and this is why we feel so strongly about it. Last year's co-sponsorship on the House and Senate side. The bills have not been formally introduced yet this year, so we don't know what it's going to look like. But in the House of Representatives, we have 86 co-sponsors, 58 Republicans and 28 Democrats. On the Senate side, 25 co-sponsors, 13 Republicans, 12 Democrats. How often do you see bipartisan cooperation like that? And I think part of it is, if you ask the Republicans alone how to do this, they want to eliminate school property taxes strictly with the sales tax. If you ask the Democrats, they want to do it with income tax. We took the politics of this in mind when we were working on the bill, and there's a nice balance between both the sales and income taxes. That's one of the reasons we feel we have such good bipartisan support for this. Most of all, it's a clean bill. A lot of legislation that comes out of Harrisburg has perks in it for special interests, for certain lawmakers. Doesn't happen here. We wrote the legislation. There's nothing in it that benefits anybody but the taxpayers and the school children of Pennsylvania. Most common objection you'll hear is loss of local control. As I said before, the only loss of local control is the ability of any 5 school board members to raise taxes at will. Spend the money in any way they want. There are absolutely no mandates in the bill. There's no loss of local control. And what kind of local control do we have now? $1.7 million artificial running tracks, that's local control? The objection, we shouldn't tax clothing, books, flags, or whatever, I already covered that. $50,000 a year for a $3,500 tax bill. Plans shouldn't eliminate for business, I've already talked about that. And the numbers don't work. That argument has been used so many times, and it's the most difficult one for us because it puts the ball in our court to prove that the numbers do work. Okay, let's do it. This is from the, I know it's going to be difficult for you to see. This is from the Independent Fiscal Office analysis. I didn't make this up. The first year, 2014-15, from this analysis, after you get rid of the local retained property tax, you're looking at replacing $11.4 billion roughly. For those of you who can see it, the bottom line says net fiscal impact. That's the line we're worried about. Against $11.4 billion, we came up $3 million short. That's 0.0003% of the total necessary. It's rounding error. So for those who say the numbers don't work, they either don't understand the bill or they're lying. Let's extend it out to the end, 2018-19. Bottom line there is showing a $1.031 billion deficit, at least that's what the opponents will say. Remember that chart I showed you earlier with the CPI, the average weekly wage, and the school property taxes? The whole idea of House Bill and Senate Bill 76 is to flatten that black line. Get the cost of education more in line with people's ability to pay. That $1.031 billion is not a deficit, it's the cost savings over a 5-year period, flattening that black line so people can more afford to pay for education in Pennsylvania. You hear the numbers don't work, send it to me, I'll tell them about it. For public acceptance, these are 2 polls, they're going to be difficult for you to read. The one on the right is from the Reading Eagle, March 13, 2013. It says, do you support the latest tax reform proposal? There was an accompanying article, this was a sidebar. Online poll, 89.02% say they support the bill. Now, we get arguments from some lawmakers saying, well, this doesn't take place all over the state. It's not a problem in the western part of the state. Really? The one on the left is from KQB Radio in Pittsburgh. They did in conjunction with the Pittsburgh Tribune and Review. They took extra pain to explain the legislation so people understood what it was about. The question was, do you believe the Pennsylvania state legislation should pass Senate Bill 76 into law? Yes, 78%. No, 22%. Isn't it time for the lawmakers to listen to what we want? Doesn't this say a lot about what the people of Pennsylvania want? We don't want the option to provide property tax relief. We know that. Give us the guarantee. House Bill and Senate Bill 76, get it done. Eliminate the school property taxes forever. I hear all the time, I hope that they will do something about it. They, meaning the lawmakers in Harrisburg. We pushed this issue for a long time. Left to their devices, you guys accept it. Left to their devices, they're not going to do anything, at least the opponents were. And good luck, I hope you can do it. I can't do anything. I'm a facilitator, and that's all. I'm here to spread the message, to let you know about it. If you agree with what you've heard tonight, we need you to become involved in this. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your family, anybody you know about this, have them visit our website, have them learn about the plan, and have them let their lawmakers know we want this done. We can achieve this with your help. That's my presentation. I'm sure our lawmakers will stand. read the slide, by the way, and it should be delivered to you given when you first came in. Our lawmakers have a few words to say tonight, and then we'll be glad to take your questions. Bob?
I've got a trivia question for you first. On the lighter side, did anybody recognize Mr. Ballinger's voice? He was a golden voice from WYNS during the 70s. Right here. Spinning those tunes. I again want to thank Senator Argo, Representative Knowles, and Representative Heffley. It's a long night for them. Hopefully their wives have a warm dinner ready for them when they get home, because we're keeping it from them. And the last thing I'll say tonight is, in the beginning I talked about that $12 billion, and that 76 is so much more than just a property tax shift and putting extra money in your pocket. It is going to create economic stimulus that would probably be a model of the country. Jobs will be created, the KOZs, that it's a self-feeding upward spiral. That's why in the beginning I used downward spiral. Jobs created, middle-class jobs, people buying more goods, more revenue into the system, real estate explodes, construction, people that are afraid to put patios on their house will now do it because the assessor's not going to come out and tax them. So I pass the mic on to Senator Argo now, and then if you would just pass it right down the line.
I can do that. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to come out tonight. You know, my life changed a couple of years ago when this guy, Representative Cox, came to me and essentially said, look, you have voted with us when you were in the House every single time. This bill has never been introduced before in the history of the Senate of Pennsylvania. Will you put it in? And I said, hell yeah. In Berks County and Schuylkill County, I mean, there is no more important issue. I can't buy a hot dog. I can't get a tire fixed anywhere in my district without somebody asking me about this. And it has grown and grown and grown. And I know it seems like it's been talked about forever, but I'm here to tell you, we have never been this close before. After you invited me and advertised that I was coming tonight, I got an interesting invitation. Governor Wolf wanted to talk to me about this tonight. And I said, Governor, I'd love to talk to you, but I have to be in Lehighton on Wednesday, so pick another day. But I mean, and the good news is, you know, when the governor is paying attention to an issue, there is no better way. I mean, I represent 1/50th of the state, all right? The state representative represents 1/203rd of the state. We only have one governor, and so the simple math on this, I know Dave gave you a lot of numbers, a lot of important numbers, 26 senators, 102 representatives, and yes, we need that one governor. And so far, he's met us about halfway. I think we've got it moving in the right direction. And my message to him when we sit down and talk for the very first time on this issue, and I hope it's soon, is going to be, Governor, partial elimination doesn't work. Because how do I, in any way, sit down with constituents, look them in the eye, and answer their question when they say to me, yeah, what about next year? Or the year after that, or the year after that? And that's why, from one end of Pennsylvania to another, we've said to folks that the only way to fix this is to kill it off for all time so it never, ever, ever comes back. Right now, in the Senate, I believe we have the votes for this for the very first time. Senator Eichelberger is chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. He's a co-sponsor. He would like to move this in the next couple of weeks. We believe we have the votes in the Senate Finance Committee. It's going to be close. It was close last year when we only made it by 1. I think this time we might make it by 2. I also think that we have the votes in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Down in the Lehigh Valley, Pat Brown, chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He's a co-sponsor. So we get it through Finance, we get it through the Appropriations Committee, we get it to the floor where, again, it's close, but I believe we have the votes. And then people say, well, you know, what about the House? Can you imagine the impact if this bill to eliminate school district property taxes passes the Senate of Pennsylvania for the first time in history? Ask Jerry and Doyle, that really means something to your average state representative. And what we have seen time after time after time at meetings like this, sometimes the local state representative or state senator, they might not be a big fan But if they hear it from their constituents, that's what's really matter. That's what really matters. Senator Yudichak has been very helpful, now representing all of Carbon County. He has worked as hard as any Democrat. Senator Schwenk from Reading, another Democrat, has been very helpful. John and Judy sat down with every single Democratic member and essentially said yes or no, just like Senator Fulmer and I did with every single Republican member of the Senate. And so our goal is to get it to the governor's desk. Reading paper said to me, well, what if the governor vetoes it? And I said, wow, if we get this bill through the House and the Senate for the first time in history, I wouldn't want to be the governor to say no. I just can't imagine. And so I know it seems like it's been long and it's been frustrating. And believe me, for those of us that have been on the front lines of this one, it has been all of those things. But, you know, the magic formula, again, 26, 102, and 1. And, I mean, we have the support of the local representatives here. We have the local support of all of the local senators. Up in Monroe County, I mean, Mario Scavello, believe me, I did another TV program. I know you just did one with him. I mean, this is the #1 issue that he hears every day in Monroe and Northampton County. And so what we ask you to do, however, is you have a cousin or a brother-in-law or a best friend or an old girlfriend in Philly or Pittsburgh or Erie or wherever, make sure they're talking to their representatives and senators too. Because, I mean, you or I can talk to the people, the good senator or the good representative from Erie or Crawford County or Washington County. It's not going to mean a lot. They need to hear it from their people. And so, as I said, please keep up the pressure. That's why we've gotten this so far. But I do have one minor correction. You said we weren't going to make any political deals, David. I did have to make one deal. I promised that the day this passes, I'm going to pay the damn sales tax on my wife's shoes. I just think it's the right thing to do, all right?
Thank you, Senator, and Robert Kistler and everybody put the meeting together tonight. Thank you for holding this informational meeting. It's great. It's always great to get the message out about House Bill 76. I'm a co-sponsor. We voted for it. Jerry and I both voted for it last session on the House floor. It's something that I believe will work and can work, and certainly would want to see this plan move forward. I've been an advocate of property tax relief because I live it. I pay the same taxes as everybody in this room does. I mean, how many people in this room are paying, you know, under $2,000 in property taxes? One. How many people are paying under $10,000 in property taxes? You know, how many people are paying over $10,000 in property taxes? Yeah. So that's why we're here. It's not an equitable system, you know, it's a lot of it. You know, as David expressed, Waldner had expressed in his presentation, a lot of it are the cost drivers in education. I mean, there's just been an explosion in the amount of money that we spend. The pension crisis alone is crushing. 33% of payroll pension costs. For every 2 employees, you're funding another one on pension. That's where your tax dollars are going. And so, I mean, all those things have to be addressed going forward. The biggest thing we need to do is get this bill done. I mean, get the property tax elimination done. It has to be a dollar for dollar elimination. It can't be, you know, I know the senator is very optimistic on the governor. And I've talked to some folks and they said, why can't you get this thing passed in Harrisburg? I said, we just had a gubernatorial election and the governor didn't run on property tax reform and he won by 10 points in our region. The guy was against 76 in the campaign. Now, if he changes his mind, but the way you vote at the ballot box is you get what you get. It's in a lot of areas. A lot of folks that voted against this bill in Harrisburg last time, they got reelected. So, I mean, we have our work cut out for us. I am very, very, you know, optimistic that we can get something done. The Senate is moving ahead. The bill will be introduced in the House, and we're going to push for it. But it's up to the people in this room, as the Senator expressed, and talking to, if you have relatives in other parts of the state, because it has to be a statewide initiative, and we need 102 votes in the House, and we got to get it done. It's critically in our area. Some people say, well, this doesn't work, or that doesn't work. I say, well, the system we have right now, it doesn't work. So I don't think anything, 76 is going to be much better for our region. And I meet with so many people who, they've outlived their savings, their homes are paid for, the taxes are going up every year, and they can't afford to live in their house anymore. And they can't sell it because too many districts are what they call spot assessing. As soon as they sell the house, I heard from one local realtor for a home in the Panther Valley, $70,000 home, $7,000 a year property taxes. When those tax bills are so much more than your mortgage, you're going to have areas that are going to become blighted and you can't sell homes. And that's happening throughout our region. So we definitely need to continue this push, and I'm certainly going to do everything that I can to support Dave, and really got to commend Dave on continuing to push this issue, because it's not a popular issue in Harrisburg. It's a popular issue here, but it's not in Harrisburg. And I think that's what is so hard to sometimes comprehend. Is how
make it popular.
we can make it popular, and we can continue to push. But you have to realize that all those folks that voted against it, they all got sent back because their people are telling them something different. And that's why we need to continue to push, and that's why it's going to continue to be a statewide push. Now, I think we're close. And I'm going to be there fighting, as I've been since I've been elected, since day one. Because like I said, I live it. I come home, my wife asks me every day I get home, what do you do about property taxes? And I know it because I got to write that check out and pay it. And that's the key, and we just got to keep fighting. But thank you.
We're going to get tremendous media coverage on this.
Yeah.
The press is going to explode. What's that going to do to the House Congress?
Oh, I think that'll definitely help, and I'm for it. Let's get it done.
The other thing that helped too is that
how many first-term members elected over in the House? No, how many first freshmen? Several up in the Poconos. They tell me this was the only issue that they talked about. And then I turn on the TV one day, and there's a young representative candidate running, and this was up in, I guess, Wilkes-Barre, Kingston. TV ads, they had already decided it was the #1 issue there. And so we did turn a couple of no votes into yes votes. I know we still have a way to go, but among the newer members especially, I think that we've picked up. I know in the Senate, we turned a no vote into a yes vote that way. There you go. Yeah. Jared. I get very nervous whenever I do this, but it's now my turn to turn it over to Representative Knoll.
So Largo and Heffley said, don't talk too long. And then, by the way, I was a diggity dog. Everybody familiar with diggity dog? Yeah. I was a diggity dog. I had a hot dog and a hamburger, and that was very good. You're still with me? Everybody's still here? I want to thank Robert. Thank you for putting this together, and David. Thank you, and David Baldwin. No one, and I mean no one, even people in Harrisburg, that know more about House Bill Senate Bill 76 than David Baldwin. And this has been a passion with him, and I certainly commend him and thank him for it. The governor. Okay, the governor. I'm gonna type it over there now. I better watch what I say. Yeah, but the governor is he's a bright guy. He's a very personable guy, and he's slick. He's pretty slick. He really is. He invited us to the mansion in groups of about 25, 30. He invited the legislature, and he brought us in and he gave us a cup of coffee and a donut, and we sat around the table and we talked, and he said, I'm really here to hear what you have to say. I want to know what's on your mind. I want to know what's important back in your business. And he was taking notes throughout the whole breakfast. You know what he did? We basically wrote, thinking back on it, we basically wrote his budget address. That's what we did. Because everything that we talked about is what he talked about during his budget address, recognizing that it was important. It was important to the people of the Commonwealth. Now, what I will tell you is, that's why we talked about property tax in his budget. Now, he really did screw it up. You know, he really, but it was the buzzword. It was the buzzword. House Bill, Senate Bill 76. You know, this was something that he grasped and he, excuse my language, but he bastardized it, is what he did. That's exactly what he did. And what I will tell you is that he helped us get the attention of a lot of people because he didn't talk about what we want to do, but at least he brought the issue up. And just the gentleman in the third row there, we got 59 votes in the House the last time, okay? And I can shoot Doyle's half the year off until the cows come home. But you want to know what means more? You as his constituents. People, well, yeah, he did, Doyle did, but I'm saying, you got to get that, okay? We're your friends. We got to go after people who we don't have on board, and believe me, I can chew their ear off, Doyle can chew their ear off, big, but you want to know something? The people that they represent, that means more to them than anything. Because guess what? They're the ones that are going to vote for them in 2 years, or in 4 years. So, you know, it's almost like, I almost feel like I'm sitting in church and we're yelling about everybody not coming to church. We're all supportive of this legislation. It's good stuff, but we got to continue. David, you hit it on the nose. We got to continue to raise all kinds of hell on this. Get it on the TV when we can. Get it in the newspaper we can. And Senator, quite honestly, I believe that the best chance that we have, if you can get it out of committee in the Senate and you can get it over to the House, I think you will see those numbers grow from 59. Now, it's not going to be an easy lift. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not going to be an easy lift. But I will tell you that will put pressure on the people that I work with. That will put pressure on them. And politicians sometimes don't like pressure, but I think pressure is good. I think pressure is good, especially when you're putting pressure on for something that I want. It's good. So anyway, I can't believe it. We're actually on schedule. Do you believe that? I can tell a lot of Harris that that's for sure. Thank you all for coming up.
Just to add, with that push, I mean, last year was, I think, the first time we actually got, well, as an amendment, House Bill 76 onto the floor for a vote. And I think that was crucial because we had a lot of co-sponsors who then didn't want to put that vote up. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to push and keep pushing. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
What we're going to do for questions tonight, because there's so many, normally we would pass the mic around, but passing it across people, we're going to ask that you get in line and go over here where Dave is to ask your questions. Because I know I've been a person in that row with my hand up all night and nobody ever picked me. So you can get in line and ask your question there. Thank you.
Yes, hi. So my concern is the following. I represent the Northeast region of Pennsylvania for the Pennsylvania Builders Association. And I was in a committee meeting on property tax and what we should do about it. And the problem is that there's a lot of misinformation that's being pushed. This is extremely popular in our area, and I greatly support it because it will do so much good for all of us, and in particular our economy. However, I would suggest, to gain popularity in this, that we emphasize that this is for property tax equality. Because, ladies and gentlemen, in our area, you're getting screwed. We're paying 300% more than other areas. So let's bring the equality, tax equality, into the picture. Thank you.
This question question is to the senators and House representatives. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. New York has been running a commercial for about a year now, going on 2 years. It's called Startup New York. And I've researched that as to exactly why they're running those ads in Pennsylvania. Basically, New York is offering for businesses currently, if you relocate or open up a subsidiary location in New York, they give you 10 years of complete property tax elimination fee. No school, no municipal, no local and nuisance taxes for businesses in New York. They know, I've called some realtors, and I've talked to them at length about that. They specifically know that Pennsylvania businesses and residential properties are struggling because of the school taxes. So now what they're going to do, their program has been very successful. Now what they're offering, they're going to be throwing this out there, is for residential property. 10 years, complete property tax elimination, zero taxes for 10 years. What I'm saying to the Senate and to the House of Representatives of Pennsylvania is, we're currently the laughing stock of our adjoining neighbors, other states. They know that the people who pay the school bills are suffering badly. It's really in your court now. This is the year, this is the time to get it done. If we cannot get this done in Pennsylvania, we can't stay here. We have to leave. I mean, who would not, in their right mind, want to take up an offer like that? 10 years of no taxes to open up a business, and then down the road, 10 years of no residential. It's a perfect opportunity, so why not do it in Pennsylvania? Why don't you do it? Why don't you get it done? We really need it now. And I think that everybody in this room would agree with that.
That's the goal.
Good evening, and my name is Larry Consoli. I'm from Summit Hill. By the way, I'm a registered Democrat, but for the past 40, 50 years, my family relation had voted Democrat and Republican. I'm here to support House Bill 76, 100%. Something ought to be done. As it was explained, there's too many homes being on sheriff's sale. Too many seniors, fixed incomes, loss of a spouse, veterans, people. There's inequality. You know yourself in the 70s and 80s, I see it. I worked in the industry as a machinist. The manufactured industry in Pennsylvania, you should know, it just started to disappear. Everything went overseas. The minimum wage didn't keep up with inflation. So something got to be done. And some of you may have read Times News, you have a pension crisis. You have it with the teachers union, public employees union, and the state union. Back in 2001, Mr. Algar, you know that the stock market was great, okay, but you voted yourself a 50% raise. Well, why wasn't it 25%? Everything can't be uppity up here. This is a depressed area. Now, I have to thank Mr. Knowles and Mr. Heffley for the correspondence you sent me in reference to House Bill, I believe it's 2013. Or Senate Bill 1310. I want to thank you and your staff. It was very interesting to see everybody talk here, and something ought to be done, and we wish you the best luck here. And again, Mr. Heffley, if you ever need me for some volunteerism or anything, I'm available, or Mr. Knowles or Mr. Hall. Okay? Thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you.
If I may make a comment here, sir, you mentioned something about unions, and I didn't bring this up during the presentation, but a lot of the problems with passage in Harrisburg is the influence of the special interests. There is a lot of special interest opposition to this bill. The Bar Association and the trial lawyers don't like it because it taxes certain legal services. Although criminal and domestic matters are not taxable, they oppose it. Of course, the State Teachers Union opposes it. State Teachers Union is the largest lobbying group in Pennsylvania, and they're coming down hard on the lawmakers. And I think what this comes down to is it's us against them. and somehow the special interests always seem to win these battles, we're not going to let it happen this time. This time, we're going to win it instead of letting the special interests do it. I'm sorry, I had to stick that in there. My fault.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Frank Tabori, and I'm running for school board this year. My questions that I have is that our school board, and speaking with the solicitor personally last meeting, is that this school board is pushing hard to have the contracts let out on the stadium and the elementary center before they leave this December. All right, now, that's going to be increasing the construction at this point, just based on the architect's numbers that David and I know are already wrong. I have 40 years building buildings bigger than this, much bigger. And what's happening is that we're already at 67 million. So the numbers that they talk about, 26, 32, it's 67 million, and it's climbing. Just on the two schools that are under fix, they are already a 30% increase. The bill, it was going to be a $10 million job, and now it's up to 13. So if you look at the 3,000 divided by, it's a 30% increase, or close to it. Now, the question that I have, does the board that we have are runaway, and no one goes to the meetings as citizens, because either very wealthy here, or they just don't care. And either way, they deserve what they get. And that's for me. So the other thing is, what happens to all of this? Because we're going to be obligated for this tax bill. And now, when 76 goes into play, do you absorb all of that and wipe us clean? Or are we going to be paying twice? Once to the state for workers' comp and whatever else you're going to do, and we're going to pay this tax bill besides. And that's what, you were all there, we want a straight answer, because if we're paying twice, we need to know that so we can quote everybody and quote me too.
Sure. And this was one, David had mentioned the 80-some taxpayer groups that worked on this one around and around and around, and the version that they finally came up with was this, that for those school districts that have no debt, and there aren't many, but there are a few, they would immediately go to 100% property tax elimination. For the other school districts that have a higher debt, they would only get maybe an 80 or 90% cut in their property taxes, nothing to sneeze at, and when that debt is paid, then they would also go to 100%. And in the future, no school district would ever again be able to levy a school district property tax. And if they decided they did not have enough money with that dollar-for-dollar replacement, as David said, they'd have to do something radical. They'd have to ask the taxpayers for permission. And the crazy thing is, it's really not that radical. A lot of other states have had that system for 100 years. It's radical for Pennsylvania, but that's the answer to your question.
Well, then we would still be paying it for the next 25 years.
You would still be paying the debt, but the other 80 or 90% of your property taxes would be eliminated.
Right, but
right now, Lehighton has nearly zero debt. Since it is at or near zero, they have enough cash to pay off all the debt to zero. If they go to zero on their debt, and this goes through, no property tax.
Correct.
If they incur this $100 million worth of debt, they're dragging all the taxpayers along for another 20-year ride, or 26-year ride on this bill, even after this thing gets fixed.
That's correct.
They will
maintain a small portion, will maintain a small portion of the property tax to pay that incurred debt. If you incur that debt before 76 is enacted, you'll have the retained property tax.
Which maybe is another reason for us to get this bill passed to the governor as soon as humanly possible.
well, let me ask you another question. The purpose of me trying to get on the board is that what I want to do, I need to have all board members that are running, that are currently on the board, replaced. If anyone votes for one of them back on the board, because they're your friends, neighbors, boyfriends, girlfriends, you're getting what you got. Now, you have to turn around. No. Well, anyway, the question is that if I get on the board, I want to have a vote or referendum to stop the construction and to have a voter referendum so that people can vote on if they want the new school or the stuff fixed, or do you want your taxes raised? And the question that I have then, because I really don't know, is that if they place the contracts, and they place the contract with the bonding agent, they're trying to place the bond right now, which is going to be a total of $52 million to include the elementary school and the 2 additional renovations. And they're not delaying that, because when this bond that's currently in right now, $7.5 million, has to be paid off by midsummer sometime. If they pay it off, we automatically have a voter referendum that we can do. But by having a continuing construction loan, which they've already paid off the $4 million from the school in 2003 or something, when you read the bond of $7.5 million. So what they're doing is they're continuing an existing construction loan with over $13 million in the bank, rather than paying it off. Now, if they pay this off with an existing $52 million bond that's happening right now, then you all are going to have no voter referendum rights, and they build whatever they want. And this is what has to happen. You're being boozled because no one reads it. David and I read the bonds, we read the contracts, we read everything. And that's how the paper got started, and that's why I sound like a crazy person.
With explaining House Bill 76, it's really the grandfather debt clause that would be in there would cover that. And that, that's a provision that's in there, because that's a local debt that would be incurred. So it wouldn't be, if one district had it or another, people in other areas aren't going to have to pay that grandfather debt off this building project. Now, granted, you're still going to get 90% reduction. Because, I mean, what is the operating budget of the Lehighton School District?
$36 million.
$36 million. So, what's the debt service on an annual basis? 5. So you're looking at $5 million, all in collecting loans. So you're looking at a significant reduction. Now, so that's how this bill deals with it, because this is across the state for every school district that would be impacted by grandfather debt. So that would be taken care of at the local level.
I've read this bill. I think it's a solid bill. I've been a building inspector for 25 years. In the last 5 years, and I issue 400 to 500 permits a year. In the last 5 years, that's the first question half the people ask me. How is this going to affect my property taxes? This bill, eliminating these property taxes, will, bar nothing else, create economic development in this state with the building industry like we haven't seen in decades. Pass the bill. By the way, my name is Dwayne Dellicker.
Good evening. I came here as a skeptic tonight. Okay? That's a bit of a confession, and I might be considered a special interest, you might say, because I own 7 buildings and 12 units. And my interest peaked when I believe it was you, Mr. Bollinger. You said it was basically in favor of business, that it was in favor of House Bill 76 was in favor of business because it's in favor of people, on the rationale that if you own a business as a person, you pay taxes. And the extending that taxes is tax debt is a burden to a lot of people who live in poverty in Hardin County. Now my question to you, if you own multiple properties, is there any tweak on this that would disqualify me as more than one household?
Any tweaks that
would preclude me from a benefit?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Every single building that pays property tax in Pennsylvania would be eliminated.
Well, you converted me from a skeptic to a believer. And so there's value in me coming to.
Oh, yeah, and David, I think it started to talk about, there were some folks that say, oh, well, don't do it for businesses, just do it for individuals, and he's absolutely correct, businesses just pass it on. But what they don't say is if we just did it for individuals, that would mean it would take us 4 more years, because it's a constitutional amendment. That then means all the special interest groups could come in and spend millions of dollars against us on a referendum question, on TV. I should also note that not every special interest is working against us. The realtors have been very helpful across the state. Many of the building associations have been very helpful. And if any of you are members of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, thank the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, because it's in the beginning of their book this year that they are in complete support of the bill, and every book is going to be handed to every representative and senator in the next couple of weeks. So we do have some allies on this, but I wish I could tell you it's a level playing field. We ain't there yet, but we're getting there.
Go ahead. Let me mention one more thing, please. We've heard a lot of objections from people who say, well, and regarding what Senator Arnold said, the uniformity clause of the state constitution says you cannot tax people at different rates within the same taxing body. This is why...
Where is that in the Constitution?
Pardon? The uniformity clause. Everybody in a taxing base, in this case a school district, has to receive exactly the same tax treatment.
Is that
in the case of 76, that's statewide. So you can't just eliminate for homeowners and not the businesses. Everybody has to have complete elimination. But I have a question for you in return.
Yes.
Some of the comments we've had from people, landlords who own apartments or houses, are going to see their property tax reduced and they're going to gouge their tenants.
I don't think so.
Well, I want to ask you, if your property taxes are eliminated, are you going to help out your tenants with that and reduce the rents proportionally?
My rents are substantially below what I believe market value should be, because I can't get anything more from my tenants. I have people who have owed me $3,000 until they get their tax back, and I work with them. There's no more to bleed out people. And the sentiment that I have heard in different meetings here in Lehighton that seems to carry a lot of people, oh, the children. Oh, we need a big place for the children, sweet little innocent children. Well, I figured that at about $25,000 a year that I earn for keepable income as a landlord, by the time I'm 60, and I'm 55 now, I figured that I will have given the government over $500,000 for the children. And I know that if I don't pay my taxes, I really don't own my building. Because I'll get kicked out right on my hiney, right on the macadam, and guess what the government will do to my children? They'll put my lovely children out too. And so I appreciate that you are moving people closer towards true ownership with property reduction of taxes. Thank you.
You bring up a good point there. We really don't own our homes. You've either the mortgage paid off, you think you own your home, as long as the government can take it from you for not paying the property taxes, you don't own your home. Do some research on the web and look at the comments from the founders. I'm talking about Jefferson, Adams. They all have something to say about private property rights. It is the foundation of our country that property rights are inviolable. And still we allow our government to seize our property. This sort of sounds like something from Lenin's time, doesn't it? Government seizing your property? Anyhow, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Jerry Strubinger. I'm on the school board at Jim Thorpe. And I want to thank Dave for your effort all along. Dave, I've been with you all along on this effort. And it's a good thing that we need to get done. But prior to this happening, I'll offer this suggestion to our representatives. Tax equity. We need to have tax equity in the school. If each school district got the same amount per capita, we would come around real quick to this House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76. I know from Jim Thorpe, Our basic education subsidy is 2.7 million, and everybody else in Carbon County gets 2 million more or 3 million more than Jim Thorpe. We're just as poor as the rest of the people in Carbon County. So work hard for this. Threaten them with per capita. All these 144 people that are in the House that don't want to vote for this, we're going to per capita. They'll come around quick. They're counting on that low tax assessments and school property tax because they get a lot of money from the state. You talk about Berwick, what, 60% of their tax revenue comes from the state. No wonder their taxes are good. I wouldn't vote for tax elimination to come about, but thank you very much.
Thank you. And you know, the way that we fund public schools today simply makes no sense. I've said it many times. It's an 1834 model. Really? Now, the most important thing that we're going to do in funding public education is going to be based on how big is your house? Did you fix the hole in your roof? How many acres do you live on? When was it last assessed? When was it last spot reassessed? I mean, I've got a PhD in public policy from Penn State, and if you ask me how to explain all the details in my property tax bill, I'd screw it up, okay? So no, it's a system that needs to be reformed. The way that we do it today, that we force school board members into it simply makes no sense. And as I said, you can't fix it halfway. The only way to do it is to kill it off so it never comes back.
Good evening. My name is Rocky Arner, and I'm on the Lehighton School Board. And I do want to commend you, David, for what you're doing and carrying on with this. Because at first I wasn't, you know, you and I disagreed on some things, but it was always out to protect for the area. And I think some of the things, what I want to say is, this is going to make the state accountable, and it's going to make the school boards accountable. I mean, it's a very good thing. If you get 2%, then the school board has to make sure they're using that 2%. And just for like the history of what happened at Lehighton School area, okay? In 2008, 2009, and 2010, the taxes in Lehighton were raised, and their fund balance grew over $7 million. Now, when I came on the board in 2011, I thought, my opinion was it was taxpayers' money, and that should not be put in the bank. We're not Lehighton Area Savings and Loan, we're Lehighton Area School District. Now, with this board, with having it going to a referendum, right now everybody's screaming for a referendum, but right now with a referendum, you have to watch how you say it, and until it winds up, it's non-binding, which 5 school board members could, 10,000 people to 1, could vote not to build something, and then 5 school board members could still pass it. Now with this bill, you have it that you can. So this is, I mean, this is holding everybody accountable, and like in our area now, you're talking about a football field.